Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about another clair, which is clairaudience. And this is all about how you hear psychic information. Now, if you're new here, my name is Lauren and I'm a psychic development coach. So please subscribe, stick around, check out some of my playlists because I'm all about teaching you guys how to use your psychic abilities. Now check out the description down below for all of the other clair videos, but just know that these are kind of just a brief overview of each of them, how you receive them, kind of what they look like, and how you can strengthen them and actually practice reading with them. But if you want to learn more, check out my video course on this. I go way more in depth. I kind of give you more context and actually show you how to put it all together so that you can perform a reading. So first, let's just talk about the clairs. So the clairs are how you receive psychic information. So when you get a hit or when you ask for a question from your spiritual team, it's how that information comes through. How are you perceiving it? And basically, we have 5 senses, right? We have our taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing. And those are our normal 5 senses. And your psychic senses are an extension of those, +1. But that's the claircognitive video. We'll get to that later. And so basically, you can hear like you can normally hear, but then there's psychic hearing. And if you want to know if it's a clair or not, all you have to do is go back to your original 5 senses and ask, okay, which way am I receiving the psychic information? Am I seeing it? Am I hearing it? Am I tasting, smelling, or touching, or receiving like a touch feeling with this clair? And that's how you can identify which clair it is. Now, the cool thing about clairs is that they can be strengthened individually, they can be strengthened all at once, and you can shut them off. So if you're receiving information through a clair and you don't like it, you can shut it off and switch to a different clair. So specifically today, we're going to be talking about clairaudience and how you can strengthen your hearing and your thoughts that come through psychically. So the word clairaudience, this is a French word, and we're going to break it down so you can kind of understand and help memorize it with all these clairs. So the first part, clair, is clear, and the second part, audience, is hearing. So clairaudience is clear hearing. So if you are picking up a hit and you are hearing the information, then you would describe it as a clairaudient hit. If you're describing yourself and you're saying, I am very clairaudient, you can also say, my strength is clairaudience. So those are kind of the different ways that it can be used. So let's talk about how clairaudience is experienced. Now, the first way that I experience it is basically hearing things that aren't actually in your physical reality. So you might hear a truck, a cell phone, a person speaking, but there's no one around you that is actually causing that sound. And then the second most, I think, common way that people experience clairaudience is by having kind of thoughts or auditory thoughts coming in your head. You're kind of hearing it in your mind's ear, and these thoughts are not yours. They're from somewhere else, from something else. And now this is what can be so hard about clairaudience, is because usually when we talk to ourselves, we kind of have this inner dialogue that we're used to. So it's really hard to differentiate, okay, what's me versus what is something that is a psychic hit coming from outside. And we will talk about that in a bit. You can also hear music. Some people do readings purely based off of like the music that pops into their head. But basically think ears, you know, what are you hearing? Anything that is coming through that sounds like a sound, that's going to be categorized as clairaudience. Now, this can sometimes be like a full drawn out sentence, or sometimes you can just hear a word. Again, it could just be a sound. So it really is open to the different types of ways you can experience it. And again, if you're confused on what it is, just get more practice and focus on, okay, which sense am I using here? Am I seeing it? Am I hearing it? Am I feeling it? And then usually through practice, you'll be able to kind of fine-tune that and understand what it is and what it isn't. I'll give you an example of this. So when I was learning and I was at the program for psychic development that I took and I coached at afterwards, we were in a big office building and we were doing readings on each other, and I think we were specifically practicing with our clairs, and I heard a cell phone go off, and I sort of looked around the room because I was like, that's rude, like somebody turn off your phone. And I think I asked my partner, you know, do you hear that cell phone? And they were like, no. My coach came over and she's like, no, nobody's phone is going off, and we all stopped and kind of listened, which was cool that she allowed that to happen. And nobody else heard like a cell phone or ringing, and I'm just like, I hear it loud and clear. Am I crazy? And then basically my coach kind of walked into, okay, hey, this is clairaudience. You're hearing something that might not actually be here. And then she coached me further into, okay, what does this mean? What does this have to do in relation to the reading that you're in the middle of? So that's an example of one of the ways it can show up. Another example is through songs. Songs can come through, pop in your head, and maybe that song has a relevancy to what's going on in the reading or the question that you might have just asked. I'll make a specification here because I know a lot of people ask this. When I'm talking to spirits, not all the time do I hear their voice. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't hear a voice, but I just know it's somebody else's voice that's speaking. It's hard to describe, but at the most it just feels like something other than me. And even some psychic hits that come through, I feel like have my own voice, but I can kind of separate out if it's psychic or if it's not because of that practice and just getting familiar with my psychic ability. Let's talk about what clairaudience is not next. Now, if you actually do hear a cell phone ringing, yes, it could be a sign from the universe, but I wouldn't categorize that as clairaudience necessarily. Clairaudience is more in your mind. It's what you hear kind of in here. It's more of a mental thing. And another thing that it is not and is often confused with is schizophrenia. Now, I don't know too much about schizophrenia. I'm trying to study it more because I do think there are some similarities here and there between the psychic ability. I do feel like people with mental disorders actually are gifted in a lot of ways when it comes to psychic abilities and psychic access, but I think they experience it in different ways. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video that I would like to do someday. But there is definitely a line between hearing voices and being schizophrenic and hearing voices and being clairaudient. Now, I can't exactly say what the difference is, but if you are unsure and if you are wanting to know if that is what you are experiencing, definitely seek out a medical professional to help you with that. I will say that if it is psychic, I found that if you are controlling who it's coming from and you're setting your intention, then that information coming through should be helpful and for your highest and best good. Now, people with schizophrenia sometimes cannot control that. They cannot experience that. They can't like put a line on, hey, I'm only talking to beings of my highest and best good. And so they might experience more negative things. And so that might be leaning more into something that is other than the psychic ability. Again, I'm not an expert on that, so do not seek me out for that kind of information. I want to learn, but at the same time, I don't know that territory, but I do know that if it's crossing over into you can't control it, or you're getting a lot of negative stuff, even though you're setting your boundaries, you're setting your intention of who you're talking to, and it's still not working, then yes, absolutely go see somebody else to help with that. I am not your resource on this channel for anything of that matter. But if you're here, if you feel like your clairaudience is healthy and you feel like it's just another way you receive psychic information, then it is probably absolutely your clairaudience coming through. So whether you are already super clairaudient or you're like, I want to be clairaudient, here are some exercises that you can use to basically strengthen your clairaudient skill. And these exercises are just to practice only. It's not actual reading techniques. We'll get to that in the next chapter. But this is basically like, I want to strengthen this on a day-to-day basis. What can I do? The first exercise that I have for you is just focus on your actual literal hearing every day. So as you walk around, be mindful, and be mindful in regards to the sounds that are coming through to you. So as you walk through the park, paying attention to the birds that chirp, the dog that walks by you. When you're putting more of an awareness on your normal hearing, you're just bringing more focus to it. And you're also saying to the universe, hey, I'm setting the intention, I want to receive more with my clairaudience, so I'm going to focus on my hearing, both literal and psychically, and maybe that will kind of get your mind in a pattern of using your hearing a little bit more when it comes to doing readings. The next exercise I like to use is basically doing meditations or hypnosis that specifically focuses on your clairaudience. So you can find these on YouTube, you can find them all around, and basically just finding anything that will help you feel like you are more clairaudient and you are just putting the intention into, hey, I'm going to use this more. Now, with anything that you find online, just remember to kind of skim through it first to make sure you're okay with it. before actually just sitting down and jumping into it without hearing it first. And then the next exercise I have is a meditation that you could kind of make up on your own. You can pull up some meditation music, and then what you want to do is focus on your temporal lobe. And so your temporal lobes are focused on, okay, here is the part of our brain where we process hearing and the information that comes through our ears. And so by connecting to your actual body and your actual like body parts that help with this function, you can sort of breathe with this lobe. Imagine finding it in your mind and then infusing it with warm, white, bright light, healing light. And you can even breathe with this lobe. Imagine it expanding and contracting. You can do this with any of the clairs, but what you're doing is you're setting the intention. You're saying, I'm focused on this, I'm going to use this, I'm expecting this to come through for me. And because of that intention, you're gonna see a difference when you start actually using your clairaudience. My absolute favorite is to put affirmations in my phone. Like I have this app called My Affirmations, and I have right here, it just cycles through all my affirmations. So this says, there's always enough time. That's just one of mine. But I have one on here that says, I am psychic. But if you're specifically looking to become more clairaudient, you can say, I am clairaudient. And maybe it'll cycle through a couple times a day and you'll see that. If you don't want to necessarily download an app, you can put an alarm in your phone that goes off 2-3 times a day. So that way you have to pick up your phone, you have to shut it off, and you have to read it. And every time you read it, it says, I am clairaudient, or I pick up information clairaudiently. Through the law of attraction, basically what we're doing is we're training our mind to basically favor a certain clair. So the next exercise I have is basically just using normal old playing cards or Zener cards. And I have 2 whole separate videos on this, so if you're interested in that, check those out next. And those are basically using cards to hone your clairaudience. And you're asking, okay, which one is the red card? Which one is the black card? Which symbol is on this card? And what you're doing as you're asking those questions is you're telling your guides, I want to hear the information. And if you're getting it through any other clair, you're saying, no, 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 I don't want that clair, I want to hear it. And this is an easy way that you can, sit on the couch, pull some cards for yourself and try to force yourself to use that clairaudience. And you don't actually have to read somebody else to do that. Now, I would actually highly recommend getting this card deck. This was made by my mentor, Karen Fox, and it has the cards that you can use to do these exercises, but it also has a ton of other like prompts, especially that are clairs focused, to help you develop your psychic abilities. So it's like a 90-day practice your psychic skills. But in the back, it comes with these colored cards so that you can basically try to guess, okay, where's the orange card, where's the blue card, using your clairaudience. So if you don't have a Zener card deck or you don't even have playing cards, I would just spend the money, get this, and use it to hone your psychic abilities, because not only will it help you with those games that I talked about, but it is also going to give you even more exercises on the clairs days to tell you how you can hone those clairs more. I would highly recommend this book as well. The Psychic Workbook goes over all the clairs, and it's an actual workbook that you can write in and do exercises and hone that clairaudient ability. Now with clairaudience, focusing on music and sound and all of those things can absolutely help with your clairaudience. So I would focus on using maybe singing bowls if you have them. Also tuning forks and like chimes. There's a lot of people out there that do professional sound healing courses. I'm not super adept with all of that, but I know that there's ways in which you can engage your literal hearing to help you with your psychic hearing. Now just remember, the biggest thing when you are practicing all of these little day-to-day exercises, that you're focusing on what you did get right. It's easy when you're practicing to often get things wrong, and you will, that's just part of the process. But when you focus more on the things you got right, like how is it that you could have possibly got that answer out of all the answers that it could have been? Focusing on your successes will help you encourage and trust your psychic ability more, and trust that clairaudience specifically. So celebrate your successes more, focus on the positives, and try to just let the negatives and the things that you got wrong kind of wash off your back. Because we want to focus on improving it in practice and not necessarily was I right or was I wrong. That will come with time. So let's get into actual reading exercises that will focus specifically on clairaudience. Now again, remember with any of these, as you're reading, if you are starting to pick up with a different clair, say, no, 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 I don't want that clair, I want clairaudience. And really try to force yourself to pick up things clairaudiently. Say, no, I want it as a thought. I want it as like an auditory sound. Give it to me that way. And then when you set that intention, you're making sure that you're focusing on that clair and not just leaning into the clair that is maybe a little bit more comfortable for you. Now, the most simple reading technique for clairaudience is as you're sitting down to a reading, just simply telling your guides, saying, hey, I want to do this reading clairaudiently. I am expecting to hear all the information come through clairaudiently. So easy peasy. First one is just setting your intention. One of my next favorite ways to actually read using clairaudience is when I'm in the car or I'm listening to maybe the radio or something. And what I do is I ask, maybe I'm stressed out about this upcoming weekend and I want to ask my guides, hey, what do I need to know about this upcoming weekend? The next song is going to be for me. It's going to be something that will answer this question. So I wait for the next song to come up on the actual radio, and then I kind of use my clairaudience, but I also just use kind of my psychic ability in general of, okay, what in this song might have relevancy to this question. So the information that's coming through is your literal healing, but because you're focused on your ears, it's just another way to kind of do this. And it sets it up to say, hey, I'm focusing on my hearing, I'm focusing on my listening, I'm focusing on the sounds around me. And so your guides might be more prone to communicate to you in that way in the future. Now, the next thing you can do for a reading is same thing, but expect to hear the song in your head. So instead of on a radio, ask a question and expect to hear a song. And I had to do this when I was learning and we were across from people, and so they asked their question of me, I asked my question of them, and we basically had to say, okay, only give it to me in song format. And we had to then share the first song that was coming through. And it was so fun to see because some of us knew the songs and it just resonated like that. Others of us didn't know the song and we had to have that person describe it to us. And then we were like, oh, wow, okay, that actually does make sense with what I'm talking about. And then some people will actually pick up a song, they'll hear the melody or the tune, but they don't know what the song is, and then the other person is like, oh my gosh, I know that song. So that's a really fun way to just actually practice and do a reading that way. And maybe when you're stuck and you're reading for somebody else and you're just not getting anything, try to expect a song and see what comes through. And a sub part of this is also to just pay attention as you go about your day. If a random song gets stuck in your head, pay attention to it and ask, is this psychic? Is there something here? Did this song randomly pop into my head for no reason? Because I feel like oftentimes not so much. I mean, there's a difference between, okay, I just saw it on TV earlier today versus I haven't heard this song in years and it has a powerful meaning that I feel like relates to something that's going on in my life at the current moment. The next technique I love to use for actual reading is to get my printable calendar. I have a precognitive calendar where you can sort of guess your month ahead and you can go ahead and download it and print it. But as you're going through each day, and I have a whole video with instructions on this, you kind of say, okay, I want to know what's coming up on this day, this day, this day, this whole week, this whole month, but I only want to hear the information. And I kind of have that calendar set up so that you can do each clair, but if you want to do the whole entire calendar with your clairaudience only, it's a great exercise where you can sit there for a good 20-30 minutes and focus on one clair at a time, and then maybe next month you can try another clair. So I will link the calendar exercise down below. The last exercise I love to use, and I use this all the time in my live nights with you guys, basically it is an envelope exercise, and what you want to do is have somebody print something off and put it in an envelope. You can also grab a physical object and put it in a bag. So somebody else is going to have to do this for you, and then what you're going to do is basically try to guess what's in the bag or guess what is in the picture in the envelope through your clairaudience only. So you're going to ask your guides, what's in the envelope? I only want to hear what's in this envelope. And this is just a great way because you don't know what's in there. Somebody else can print it out, do it for you. It's super easy. And again, if you don't have a printer, don't want to do it that way, you can just have somebody grab something around your house, put it in a bag, and then you sit there and try to hear what is in the bag. A modification for this is you can also use a partner. And what you can do is you can send your partner a word throughout the day, and vice versa, they send you a word throughout the day. And as you're kind of tuning in, you maybe stop to tune in a couple times a day and you ask, okay, what is Bob sending me? What is the word that Bob is sending me? And then as you kind of write it down and take notes, you come back to that person at the end of the day and you say, hey, this is what I got. All while trying to pick it up only using your Clairaudience. So if you want to find a partner to do this, I do have a Facebook group where you can find another student to kind of like work with. It's our mentorship program, but I will link our psychic development group down below if you really want to find somebody to actually help you so that it feels like some outside validation, especially if you don't have anybody that's in your circle that would be willing to help you with something like this. For more reading techniques, I would check out my video on kind of everyday psychic games you can play, because you can apply that Clairaudience to any of those games, really. Like, for example, when you're driving up into a parking lot and you're looking for a parking space, you can ask your spiritual team, you can say, hey, where's the next parking spot for me? But you can tell them, hey, I only want to hear the answer. So all of those games on there, you can basically just focus purely on your Clairaudience. Now, a quick note on shutting your Clairaudience off. If you do not like experiencing Clairaudience, if it really bugs you, if it's not your favorite, you can absolutely shut it off by just setting the intention. Set the intention the opposite way of basically what I've been teaching you guys throughout this whole video. Tell your guides, hey, no, I don't want this anymore. I want to use clairvoyance instead. And if you're having troubles with shutting it off, shut down your whole psychic ability first, but really all it is just an intention of selecting Clairaudience specifically, saying, nope, I am not going to receive information this way anymore. And if you do start to receive information that way, just say, hey, nope, 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 I want clairvoyance. So it's as simple as that. It's really about just telling your spiritual team, hey, how can you communicate with me better in a way that's more comfortable for me? So if you're excited and you're ready to go get practicing your Clairaudience, I do have a whole folder of psychic exercises that you can basically watch all the videos and start practicing that Clairaudience. If you're totally new here and you're just like, whoa, okay, I just need the basics, go to my Start Here playlist and I will link that up above. So I'm curious, is Clairaudience super strong for you or super weak for you? Right now, it is currently the one that I favor the most. I'm a little bit clairvoyant, but mostly clairaudient. And it's an interesting one to have because I feel like I doubt it a little bit more because it's so similar to my thoughts, but it comes through so strongly that it's naturally become my most used clair. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this is super helpful for you. And again, remember to check out all the other clairs videos so you can kind of get an idea of all of them. Alrighty, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.